Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We are back with another Facebook Live, a rare daytime edition of our presentation. And we've got a very special guest today, Alan Berg. You're going to let Alan talk in a minute or two here. But Alan and I both go way back in this business. And I sent Alan something the other day that I found an old box in the bowels of my storage room, and it was this report that I had kept since like probably 1991 of power marketing strategies for the bridal industry, and I took a look at it. And you got to keep in mind when it was before the internet. It was before email. It was before a lot of the things that we're doing today. So, Alan, why was it that I sent this to you? What is your tie to this whole thing?
So, Wedding Pages is how I got into the wedding industry. My best friend at the time bought a franchise of Wedding Pages for New Jersey, and then the Hudson Valley in New York. And that's what drew me into the industry. I had no grand plan. You at least were a DJ before, so you were in the industry. I was not in the industry at all. And it was only because my friend bought this magazine franchise. And he called me up and he said, I don't want a partner. I want a salesman. I want you. It was straight commission. I was 1099. So no salary, no draw, no minimum, no guarantee, no base, no anything like that. New industry, right? So that's already a big leap. I was in a job that I was making good money. I had actually really good money. I had a company car. So why would I make the jump? Oh, my wife was pregnant and my older son was turning 3. So of course it makes perfect sense to go into a new industry as a 1099, right, at that point. But that's what drew me in. So when you sent me that, I saw that logo for Wedding Pages, which I was with Wedding Pages for a little over 10 years. Because I ended up publishing 2 Wedding Pages magazines and then working for the franchisor right before they got bought by the Knot. I saw that. I was like, whoa, where did you dig this out of? What crypt did you dig this out of? But you said, I call it BI, before the internet, which a lot of people listening wouldn't know what that is because they're digital natives. You and I are digital immigrants. You can't hide it because of the white hair, and I can't hide it because I have no hair. So, or maybe the white hair, maybe over here. But we're dealing with digital immigrants. That's us versus digital natives. So that was the time for us, the digital immigrants, when marketing was different because of the methods, meaning the media that you used, but the methods, maybe that's what we're talking about today. Are they really that different?
Yeah, and looking at this thing, a lot of the same things that we preach today were being preached back then. But I just found it interesting is that in that time, you had such limited choices as how a wedding pro could get the word out. You had the wedding magazines,
right? You
had wedding shows. Mm-hmm. You had, as this piece talks about, direct mail. Not sure how long we're going to have that available to us. And the Yellow Pages, I know with my DJ company, we invested a lot of money in the Yellow Pages. Mm-hmm. And then the Wedding Pages. I wasn't your customer. You were in a different state, but we were in that publication from day one in the DC area.
Right.
And then I guess, people had storefronts and they put their shingle out and that's how people found out. But that was pretty much it.
Newspaper supplements. The newspapers, including the local ones. So I lived, when I started doing Wedding Pages, I lived in Monroe, New York. Monroe, New York is a town of about 20,000 people. We had a local town called a local paper called the Photo News, right? So you have all the local, stores, and you had your local events, who's having a, yard sale or whatever, right? And most towns had one of those. And then we had the countywide regional newspaper there. So what was it called? In Middletown, New York. It wasn't the Photo News, was the local, whatever it was. So it was the local newspaper, and they would run a supplement once a year, twice a year. Some of them, like, we need to make some more money, we would run a supplement because, like you said, where were the opportunities for wedding professionals? Radio, local radio, because now, we didn't have, a million channels like we have now, because not only do you have terrestrial radio, right, like regular radio, you have Spotify, Pandora, and satellite and all this kind of stuff there. So you did have all these different things. Billboards Did you do billboards for your bridal shows back then?
We do in
Okay.
markets where we have them. Yes.
Right. So there really were more, if you start listing them out and you start saying, where could you? I'm not saying where did you, right? So when you were a DJ, it's not whether you did, right, advertise on the billboard, but you could, right? Whether you would spend the money is another story. It's not whether you did advertise on radio. You could if you wanted to spend the money. So there were a lot of these places, which now some of them are just as applicable and some of them not. Like I would argue that for a lot of markets, radio, that's tough. I mean, are you doing radio for your show still?
Pretty much got completely out of radio. A little bit of it, but not much.
Yeah, I was listening to one of I know politics is all over the TV now these days, but they were talking about how in certain markets, like for if you're trying to reach Hispanic consumers, radio is still a big means of communication for them, right? So more so than for other demographics, right? Interesting. I didn't know that because I'm not that demographic. So for me, am I sitting around listening to the radio? No, but it is a very popular thing there. So you have to know. With marketing, I think going back to then and to now, what's similar? You need to know three things when you decide where and how to market your business. You need to know demographics, geographics, and psychographics. So geographics is the easy one. Where are they, right? Like when you do a show, if you're doing Houston still, right?
Yeah.
Right.
A little bit. I'm still kind of consulting on it. I don't have to go down there.
Right. But I mean, if you think about a show for Houston, how far out did you go?
That's a very spread out market. So yeah,
right.
Further than I would do in, say, Richmond, Virginia.
Right, because Houston, kind of like LA, and that it just sprawls, right? It just sprawls. Where people think about New York City as vertical, and those are horizontal markets, right? But geographics, you'd have to go 50 miles easily, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
easily. So you need to know your geographics. Your demographics is who are we trying to attract? So that includes age, education, income, ethnicity, right? All these different things. So if you were doing a show for South Asian couples, right? That's a demographic issue. You're trying to attract them. And then psychographics, if you're marketing your business, whether you're a DJ or photographer or a venue or whatever, who are the people that are attracted to what you do? So your style of photography, or when you were a DJ, your style of DJing, because everybody is different. You all have the same music. Although back then we could argue it was a little harder because how many milk crates for
it was that was the big thing. Who had the most number of songs? And now everybody, including the consumer, has just as many songs as any DJ.
Right. So again, leveled the playing field. Which, were you really selling music back then? No, but it was a differentiating point if you had more access, which was more milk crates full of vinyl, right?
But what I always remember was like you got one shot at your ad.
Yeah.
You put an ad in the Yellow Pages and it came out and you didn't like the placement, that there was a typo. You were stuck with it for a year, just like in the magazine. So that's
months,
and you're fast forwarding to today. So we did have choices. A lot of for the typical wedding pro was not doing radio or television. It was kind of those two or three things that they chose from.
Right.
Well, fast forward to today, arguably magazines are, a lot of markets have none. Some markets still have some.
Yeah.
I think that they'll keep printing the magazines as long as people keep buying the ads. I'm not so sure about the readership, but but now you have all of the digital platforms. Mm-hmm. And the Wedding Wires and the Knots and the second and third tier wedding planning websites, not in the social and Facebook and Instagram and Thumbtack and all of these things. And I guess the difference, the plus side is that, if you don't like your ad, you can change it today. The problem is you have to manage this all the time. And I think that's why it's made it so much more challenging.
Well, the other advantage that you have today is versus magazines, Yellow Pages, newspapers, even billboards. You decide today that you want to be in that placement. You can be there today, right? You can't do that with a newspaper. You can't do that with a magazine. You can't do that with a radio ad. You can't do that with the billboard, right? You have creation time. You have all that kind of stuff. So the advantage of that is you can do it now. When I talk about advertising, people often find it funny that I use the phrase that I don't ever want anybody to buy advertising. And there was like, oh, you want us to do free? I was like, no. I don't want you to do free. What I want you to do is buy access to an audience. I don't want you to buy the ad. So if I'm deciding to do your show in DC, it's because I want couples in DC, again, geographics, demographics, psychographics. I want those particular couples to find me. If I go on the Knot, it's because I want those particular couples to find me. If I go on to a billboard, when I drive to Newark Airport, well, I haven't been there in 5 months and I don't know when I'm going to be there again, but when I drive to Newark Airport, there are billboards for a DJ company, 3 of them, right? Now, Mark, I-95 in New Jersey by Newark Airport, that's got to be really expensive.
Right.
But the fact that I see them over and over again means they're getting a return on their investment, which means the right people are seeing them, the right people are contacting them, the right people are buying, which means it's not expensive, because expensive means you don't get the return that you wanted to get. Inexpensive, or you're getting your money's worth, good ROI means you are getting that kind of return. So if you're deciding to advertise on a particular site, whether it's a major site like Wedding Wire, then not, whether it's a 2nd-tier site or a 3rd-tier site, here in New Jersey, we have njwedding.com. Good friend of mine, Eric Kent, he owns the local website, right? That's him. He owns that. He can do something that Wedding Wire and the Knot can't do, which is he can be hyper local. And you can't do that when you're a major national company. Wedding Wire and the Knot worldwide is in 18 countries, right? You can't be hyper local everywhere that you are, especially in a country the size of ours. So Eric, prior to lockdown, Eric was at every networking event. You would see him at every bridal show, right? So everybody knows him, that he owns that market. If you're deciding whether to advertise with him, you have to say, do I want his audience? That's the first question. But Mark, you know what the first question is? If somebody contacts you about exhibiting in a show, what's the first question they ask you?
How many people? How much does it cost?
Right. Now, how many people is a good one, but it's not really enough, because how many people, right? Are they the right people? Remember, demographics, geographics, psychographics. So how many people is not enough, but they do ask you how much before they know all the details, which is really funny, because what's the first question they get asked by their customers?
All the time, and they hate it. And
they hate it. And they do the same thing. But you know what? I wrote an article. It's actually, it actually ended up in this book, which is called Wisdom in the Business of Weddings. It's my latest book. And it says, I'm a hypocrite, or you. When I'm a customer, I ask how much, right? We just do that. Now, part of the reason we do that is because we don't have a frame of reference. It's called framing. We don't have a point of reference about how much should this cost. So if somebody who's listening in now was to buy a new cell phone, they've bought cell phones before. They have a reference point, a car, a truck. Maybe you need a new refrigerator, right? You have a point of reference. But when you're buying something you've never bought before, and you don't understand what the things are you should be asking, you always default to money.
So the question that works everywhere.
Because it's universal, right? Because we know at some point you're going to want some. The question is how much. So we default to that question, but it's really the wrong question, because if I could spend, and I know people have done this, they've spent $50 on Facebook ads and gotten absolutely nothing. That was expensive. Now, did they get nothing because Facebook doesn't work, or did they get nothing because the ad copy wasn't the right copy? It didn't link to the right page. They didn't follow up the right way. I mean, we know that there's so much more. Like with shows, the thing that just drives me crazy with shows is how few people actually use the list to market after the show. Drives me crazy, because they think that those few hours that they're spending at the show is what they bought. But it's not. They bought access to the audience. Well, if you have access,
I'm sure that we hear it all the time. I don't like your show. It didn't work. I didn't get any business. I'm sure you heard, how many hundreds of times did you hear that when you were selling Wedding Pages ads?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, the reason I got into doing education was because at Wedding Pages, we would find, and you would see the same thing with shows, how many people got into the business, very talented at what they do, and a year or two later, they're out of the business. Why? Because they can't run a business. And why can't they run a business? Because they didn't invest in learning how to run a business the way they learned how to do their technical skill. So a really, really talented DJ doesn't make you a great business person. A really, really talented videographer doesn't make you a great business person. A great chef doesn't make you a great business person. Matter of fact, I ask people who've been to we'll use acronyms here, the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America, not the other one. I'm a member of the National Speakers Association. We're the NSA, the other one. We're the ones that speak, not the ones that listen. That's a whole nother story. But I've talked to how many chefs, and I said, so when you were at the CIA, how many business classes did you take? And most of them say either very few or none. Okay, so you're a chef. Stay in the kitchen, right? Get somebody else to run the business. It's a different skill.
Okay, so if you're a wedding pro today and you have at your disposal all of these different pipelines, and that's the thing I talk about a lot, is like all these platforms, they're a pipeline. On one end of the pipeline is your mouth, and on the other end is their ear, and the pipelines change all the time. New ones added, things go away, and it's just a platform for getting your message out.
Right.
And if you're the typical wedding pro, you don't have a lot of time to manage all of these things. You don't have time to do them well, the same way that you do a bad ad or a bad booth at a show. What is your mindset on what should they do? They have to choose. How do they choose? And then should you focus on a couple things and do them well? Should you try to be in as many places? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, ideally, forgetting money and forgetting time for a second, you'd want to be everywhere that your demographic, geographic, psychographic customer is looking for someone like you, right? Ideally, right? In a perfect world, you would want to be there, because I always say to people, advertising, marketing, whether it's free, whether it's paid, again, SEO, whatever it is kind of like a menu. And when somebody opens that menu, they're going to choose from the choices in front of them. And if you're not one of those choices, you don't get chosen. Very simple. Right? So if we give an example, Mark, if somebody chooses not to be at one of your shows or a show, they are no longer a choice for those people coming through, correct?
Right.
Right. Same thing with Facebook, same thing with Instagram, same thing with Wedding Wire, same thing with The Knot, same thing with a local magazine or website. If you choose not to be on that platform, or if you choose to take the free listing at the back of the bus, you're basically saying, I don't want to be a choice here for very many people. Or any people if you're not there at all. Okay, that's a choice. Now, given the constraints of money, given the constraints of time, being realistic, because I consult to people on this stuff. Being realistic, how active are you going to be? And if you know you're not going to be active, then you have to avoid the platforms that require you to be active, that require you, like if you want to get business from social media and not pay for it, you're going to have to be there all day, all the time, because it's their sandbox and their toys, right? We're playing right now in Facebook's sandbox. It's Facebook's toys. If tomorrow Facebook said, we can't do this unless we pay them, it's their sandbox and their toys, right? That's it. We don't have any recourse on that. The same thing as if you're on Yelp or on TripAdvisor or even Wedding Wire or The Knot, and you're free listing, and you're getting reviews there, and they decide to turn it off tomorrow, you have no recourse because you didn't pay them. It was free. It's their sandbox and their toys. So looking at the platforms, if I was someone that does not have the time to manage something like this, you have to start with the big boys because they've already done the heavy lifting of getting the audience, Wedding Wire and The Knot. If you go onto Facebook, you have to pay to get access to the audience you want because you're going to have to buy ads because you want to get in front of people that don't know you exist. The free listings are only really getting you in front of people that already know you exist, your friends, your followers, right? That's it. So the paid listings is what allows you to get in front of, or paid listings, the paid ads allows you to get in front of people that don't already know you. So if you upload an email list and want to do a lookalike audience, if you want to target people who like certain pages and things, who are in a certain area, who have a certain status, you're going to have to pay for that. And if you don't have the time or the knowledge, or don't want to invest the time to get the knowledge on how to do that, then you have to go with something, which again, I would start anyway with Wedding Wire and The Knot, not because I used to work there. I was vice president of sales at The Knot, not because I used to work there, but because their job is to get the audience. And they've done that. The largest audience available to anybody in the States is Wedding Wire and The Knot. Plain and simple. That's what it is. You might think it's Facebook, but you'd have to go on Facebook, and to get an audience the size of what you're getting on Wedding Wire and The Knot, you have to spend an awful lot of money to get access to that. And people, always saying how it's expensive. I had a customer came to me, wanted a consultation. His cost for ads on Wedding Wire and the Knot for the year were going to be $120,000. He's in multiple markets, multiple categories. Now, I think you'd agree, Mark, that that's more than most people spend on Wedding Wire and the Knot.
I would think so. Yeah.
Okay. But I said to him, okay, so let's look at this. And he had gotten an increase, which again, nobody likes an increase. And I said, yeah, but when you raise your rates, right, you're the one raising them. So don't fault other people for raising their rates. I said, let's take a look at this. If he took 50,000 of that 120,000, I said, where would you put it? That you're not already advertising, but he was already on Facebook. He was already on Instagram. He was already doing some things like that. I said, do you have a place where you can put that money to get other couples? Because this is really important. Every platform has its own audience. No platform has the other platform's audience. Even Wedding Wire doesn't have the Knot's audience. Facebook doesn't have Google's audience, right? They're all separate audiences. So if you want the audience in your market, in your category, you have to go to that platform. I said, if you took 50,000 away, you're going to lose that business. Because those people will no longer be able to find you. Where would you put it? He said, I don't know. I said, well, then you don't take it away yet. Second thing, how much is his anticipated revenue for the year? Now, I said anticipated revenue for the year because you don't advertise. Thank you. You don't a delivery of a drink. You don't advertise for the business you have. You advertise for the business you want to get, right? It's like fishing. You put bait out there to catch the fish, not the fish in that you already have in your bucket. You want the fish that are in the lake or in the river or in the ocean. So his anticipated revenue for the year was $1.7 million. But now let me ask you this, Mark, you're a businessman. Would you invest $120,000 to get $1.7 million?
Probably, yes. I mean,
yeah.
It's like, what is your advertising budget? It should be unlimited as long as it is continuing to deliver a return. I mean, the return is diminished at some point, but.
Well, here's the thing. So a new business, I love analogies. So a new business, imagine that you're an airplane. You want to fly an airplane. So you get on an airplane and you're on the tarmac and you're just sitting there. You're just idling, right? Just like we've all been doing. You're not going anywhere, right? And if you want to get somewhere, you got to advertise and market. You got to put on the throttle. Well, if you want to get a plane off the ground, just like if you want to get a business off the ground, you have to put that throttle on as much as you can. The general rule of thumb is 10 to 15% of your anticipated revenue. That's what you're trying to do. So let's say you're trying to do $100,000 that first year. You want to invest $10,000 to $15,000 in that, right? Now that plane takes off and it takes off. Every year you want to increase, you got to keep putting in 10 to 15%, 10 to 15%. Now, once you get up to cruising altitude, so you've been in business for a number of years, you're happy with the amount of business that you have. Do you stop advertising? No, but you can pull back because you're not trying to grow it anymore. You can pull back. You can say, okay, well, I want to maintain what I am. And there's so many people in our industry that have been around. I mean, how many people do you know, Mark, in the industry that were in the industry when you started? Still a few, right?
Some, not too many, but yeah.
But 10 years ago, probably a lot, right? From 10 years ago, a lot. From 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe not. But from 10 years ago, yeah, 5 years ago, a whole lot, right? Well, some of those people are like, you know what? I'm doing my 50 weddings a year. I'm happy with my 50 weddings a year. Okay, so you can pull back, but you can't turn off the gas, right? A plane, when it's at 35,000 feet, doesn't shut off the engines, but it can back off on the engines because it doesn't take as much to stay there as it did to get there. So,
and especially in this industry where we have to recreate our customer base 100%.
Right.
Not much going back to the well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But the good news is we're in a recession-resistant business. That's the good news, right? The bad news is that this recession is unlike any other because other recessions were about housing crises, stock market crashes, and things like that. This one is, hey, you can't pull people together. That's different.
All right. Well, we are fast running out of time here. We should wrap this up with Alan. Let me just let you put this together. And sort of the teaser of this live was it's so much harder to advertise now. Okay. And I'm not so sure that is the case, but what are your, it's different, but is it harder? Is it easier? Is it, and kind of how much time should someone be spending? The typical wedding professional, what sort of time? We all know what it costs, but how much time do you need to manage this on a day-to-day basis?
I don't think it's more difficult because, like you said, there are just different avenues, but they're not. It's the principles are the same. Find the audience that you want, put yourself in front of that audience, buy the biggest, baddest placement you can get, right? That, you can afford. That's what you want to do. So I don't think it's that much harder, other than the fact that there's distractions, right? Like, should you be on TikTok and should you be on, all these other things there? You have to start somewhere. And when people come to me and say, listen, I have a limited budget, I'm like, well, who doesn't, right? I have a limited budget. Where should I go? Well, we start with geographics, demographics, psychographics. We look at what their anticipated revenue. Like if somebody says to me, I'm a weekend warrior, I'm doing invitations, and if I can make myself an extra few $100 a month, I'm happy. I don't know that I would say that you should be on Wedding Wire or not spending a few $100s a month. You probably wouldn't have to for invitations, but to try to get that return, it just doesn't make business sense. But if you say, listen, I'm doing it on the side and I want to make it my full-time gig, I want to get to the point where it pays me more money. Okay, well, now treat it more like a business. So the set it and forget it. And when I say forget it, I mean only the advertising part. You can go onto a platform like Wedding Wire and The Knot or one of the local ones like that, put your profile up, fill it really, really well with fantastic pictures of people enjoying your product and service. Make sure all your details are right there. And you can kind of leave that alone, except when you get an inquiry, you obviously have to respond right away, right? You have to do that. When you get a review, you should be responding to reviews. You should be asking your past customers for reviews. But from the ad standpoint, once you have a good looking profile with a great thumbnail and great pictures, videos, whatever, you can kind of leave it alone. You can't kind of do that with Facebook because you have to keep feeding the meter, right? You have to keep running those ads again. You have to keep deciding where that goes. So I would say if you want to do more of a set it and forget it, do that. And again, I'm not opposed to you updating it, but you can kind of leave it alone, whereas some of the other platforms, you can't do that.
Awesome. All right. Well, as we close, what is Alan Berg working on these days that would be of interest to our Wedding Pro viewers?
Well, given what's going on around us, I used to travel a lot, as you know, Mark. I mean, I was 140,000 miles. I flew last year. I haven't been on a plane since March 13th. I'm waiting for United Airlines to send me a "We miss you" card. Please come back, right? So what I'm working on now is I've come up with some group workshops at a much lower price point than doing private training with me. So this coming Thursday, the 20th, I have one, which is a group lead conversion workshop. I think we only have 3 or 4 seats left. There's only 10 seats in them. And we're going to go from the point you get a lead to the point of making a sale. We're going to run through that with a very small group. And then next Monday, I'm doing a website review workshop. I do private website reviews, but I'm doing a website review workshop where, again, only up to 10 people. And we're going to review all of their websites. And it's like a quarter of the price practically of having me do it privately. And then I do some webinars and stuff. If you go to my website, alanberg.com, you'll see some of that stuff right on the homepage. You'll see a resources page. You can find all that stuff where you can contact me directly. Did we have any other questions?
No, I think we are good. I sort of worked in things as we went along, but
actually, isn't Ray? Here we go. Ray, how do you keep an advertising budget realistic when your business is down 95% during COVID? You know what? I would treat your business now like a new business, meaning when you didn't have income coming in a new business and you were trying to invest in it, and what were you doing then? You should be looking at that kind of the same way now, because the thing with the wedding market, like you said, Mark, you have to get a new audience every year, new customers. But you're also not making a sale for tomorrow. You're making a sale for next year, making a sale for the year after. So you have to invest now for the business you want to get later, no matter how difficult that is, because if you don't, you're going to create your own recession or make your recession worse. I know that hurts, but I mean, my business is down as well because my business is you guys. So it's the same thing. But
mine sort of is too. So
yeah. Oh, listen, I totally get it. But we have to look to the future, because if we don't look to the future and don't invest in the future, our future is going to look worse than it will if we do. In every single recession we've had, and you've seen this, Mark, the people that crawled under a rock and waited for it to be over didn't come out of it as well as the people who leaned into it. And that's because the people that lean into this are actually taking market share from the people that are crawling up and waiting for it to be over.
And I think something that we have seen over the years in every economic downturn is that there are people that say, I am never getting another pink slip again. I forget this corporate life. I'm going to go into business for myself. And this wedding industry looks really cool. And the barriers to entry are relatively low in a lot of segments. And so if you're here now, I think that you can expect to have some newfound competition as things recover, because of just people that are looking for a career change, and the sexy wedding industry appeals to them.
But the other side of it is, how many times have we seen already online with businesses that are closing up, right? So there's both sides to this. The low barrier to entry has allowed almost everyone in our industry to get in. Now, if you're a venue, bigger investment cost, right? If you're a chef and you need a commercial kitchen, bigger investment cost. If you're a dress shop, have a storefront, some people in our industry have offices and buildings and stuff. But to get into the industry, like when you're a DJ, right? When you became a DJ, did you come into the industry and ask the other DJs if it was okay if you started your business?
Of course not.
Right. So nobody's going to ask them, right? Nobody's going to ask you the same way, right? But that barrier to entry allowed you to get into your business. When you started into bridal shows, you didn't ask the other bridal show producers, is it okay if I come and start a bridal show? You did it, right? You just did it. You invested in it and you did it. That thing.
Yeah, and actually what I did is I asked my local wedding pages rep if he thought it was a good idea. And he said, that's the stupidest thing you've ever done. And here we are 25 years later.
Right.
All right. With that, Alan, I want to thank you for being with us today. And
fun.
Our usual little 8 to 10 minute lives went a little bit longer. As you all can tell, that Alan and I could do this all day long. All day. And neither one of us has been on a stage for a while, so this is our stage. But thank you, Alan. We'll certainly get you back soon. And on behalf of Team Wedding, I'm Marc McIntosh. Alan Berg was our guest. Make sure you head over to teamwedding.com. And if this marketing thing is confusing you, you can get your free marketing checkup. Just fill out the form and we'll get in touch with you. So thanks again, Alan, and we will see you soon.